If you are a network engineer and thinking of how to build your infrastructure on AWS, this tutorial is for you. In this specific video, I'm going to walk you through each and every step that is required for you so that you can build your own infrastructure. Let's get started. So I have divided this into two parts. In the first part, we are going to see the business requirement. We're going to see how we can map it to our AWS network. And in the second part, we are actually going to deploy the infrastructure on AWS. And then we'll end up by summarizing what we have learned in this video. I strongly recommend that you do this process along with me so that you can learn by doing it. If you have not created your AWS account so far, please do so that you can get started with me. So let's see. We have a requirement for setting up a new business infrastructure. Let us first go through the business requirement. There is a company called Gyanwala, and they want to set up their new learning hub in India. The founder wants 3 separate departments: HR, IT, and finance. And he has a requirement that each department will be having separate systems, whether it is PC or servers. And the department like HR and IT, they should be able to reach or connect to internet. And the finance department should not be connected to internet. So this is our business requirement. Let's have a look this from a traditional approach perspective and how we can relate to AWS. To start with, the founder thinks, okay, I have to build this company. Let me first decide where I'm going to build my company. So he picks up a area, let's say Mumbai. In Mumbai, he then decides to rent out an apartment or a building where he is going to set up his office. Then this office, he breaks into different floors. The first floor or the topmost floor, he dedicates it with various systems like PC1, PC2, and he tags it with finance department name. Then similarly, he dedicates the second floor for HR department, and the floor next to it, he dedicates it to IT department. Now he has a requirement that any traffic which is going from this building, whether it is from finance, HR, or IT, they need to have a specific path. So he builds up a main door. So anybody who wants to go out of the building will be going through this main door. And since he wants the HR and IT department to have connectivity towards the outside world, he will connect the HR block to the door, and the same goes with IT department as well. So now, in this specific case, how can we correlate this to our AWS infrastructure? The first area which he has picked up, for example, Mumbai, in AWS terms, that is your region. So always when you are trying to build up your infrastructure on AWS, you have to decide where you want to host your infrastructure. So that is something called as a region. Now within the region, we are going to define a building. So in terms of AWS, building represents a VPC. So you are going to create a large virtual network within which you will be deploying all your systems. Then the floors that you see, these floors represent subnets. The subnets resides in different availability zones. These are like different data centers. And then the main door which you see. So any system which is part of different subnets, they have to go out of the network. They have to connect to your main door, and that main door is your internet gateway. So I want my HR department systems and IT department systems to be able to reach to outside world, or in other words, I would say they should have internet connectivity. So that's why I'm going to map these subnets to my internet gateway. And this, since this connectivity is there, these type of subnets will be called as public subnets. And the subnet which does not have internet connectivity going via your internet gateway are your private subnets. And the arrows that you see, which mainly tells the HR department that, okay, if you have to go out, you have to contact to the main door. These are your route tables. So with this, now we have got a pretty basic idea of the different components that we are going to configure in our AWS infrastructure. With this, we can also see, like, for example, at the PC level, whether it is a system or a web server that you plan to host, these will be called as EC2 instances. So now, since we have got a basic idea, let's proceed with the actual demo of deploying all these components in our AWS infrastructure. Okay, so inside your AWS management console, the first step which you would have to do is choosing the region. So from here, I want to deploy my infrastructure in specific region. So I have selected Mumbai as my region. Now, from this services section or from this management console itself, if you come down, you go to the networking section. This is where we plan to start with. Even though there are multiple default components which we'll go through, but I want to build it right from scratch. So I will start with networking and content delivery, where I will have a component as VPC. So you just click on this. Once I click on VPC, it will show me that at present, one VPC is present in your Mumbai region. So by default, AWS gives you all the different segments that we have discussed so far as a default option. You don't have to create all these unless you really wanted to. You can just straight away log in and deploy your instance. But I do not want to do that. I want to show you right from scratch how you can build your infra. So let's say first we'll select the your VPC section, and in here we'll click on create. I will give it a name as Gyanwala VPC. And whenever you are creating a VPC, you would have to define a specific block. Your complete network will be represented by this CIDR block. So let us say I'm choosing as 192.168.0.0/16. And at present, I want the tenancy to be just default. If you want a dedicated, you can choose that as well. Let me create this. So now my VPC is created. This is my VPC ID, which is given by AWS. And at present, if you expand here, you can see this is my CIDR, and I can see the details from here as well. Now, once this VPC is created, I would have to define my subnets, which is for different departments. So if I click on subnets, in here, you can see that by default, there are 3 subnets which are created. This is the default subnets which is present in your configuration, but I want to create a new subnet. So let's go ahead and create a new subnet and give it a name as Gyanwala, let us say HR department. HR subnet, and this subnet has to belong to a VPC. So I've just created my VPC. I'll select this, and this subnet will always be a part of a specific availability zone. So from here, I'll select as 1A. You can think of availability zone as a separate data center with separate power and all these resources. And whenever you are creating your subnet, you need to make sure that it is part of this main CIDR block. So for example, in here, I cannot put it as 0 slash, let's say 16. I cannot do this because this does not belong to the same block. So this block has to be divided further. So let us say I'm dividing it to 192.168.1.0/24. This 1.0, I'm dedicating it for my HR segment. So let me create this. My subnet is created. Similarly, I will also create, this is my HR subnet. I will also create a subnet for IT. And from here, I've chosen the availability zone as 1B. And for this specific block, I have decided to go with 2.0/24, create. And then let me create one more subnet. From here, I will choose the specific VPC, and the availability zone will be 1C. Again, for this, I have chosen as 192.168.3.0/24 and click on create. So till now, I have chosen my specific region or the area. I have also decided the building where I'm going to build my infrastructure. I have also decided the different floors where I'm going to put my different servers or PCs. Let me just rename this to IT subnet. Okay, so now I will have to create a route table. In here, you can see by default when you create a VPC, a route table also gets created. So for example, you can see this is the route table which is associated with my VPC ID, and this VPC ID is the Gyanwala VPC which we just created. But I don't want to use this. I want to use my own routing table. So I'll click on create route table. And this I have to associate with my VPC. So now This route table is associated with my VPC. And at present, once you select this and click on routes, you will be able to see the specific segment, the main CIDR, which is associated, and at present this is local. And if you see the subnet association, at present, none of the subnets which I have created are associated with this. So by default, when we create the subnets, unless you have associated with your custom routing table, they will be associated with your default or your main route table. This is the main route table which gets created when you create a VPC. So now, but I want that everything has to be routed as per my routing table. So I am going to associate the route table with my subnets. So I'll click on edit subnet and then select all of these three. In here, I can see this is for HR, IT, and finance. Then click save. So all my subnets are associated now as per this routing table. Okay, this is done. Now I have a requirement that the systems in my IT and HR should be able to reach to the internet. So for this, I'm going to create my internet gateway. So by default, you can see there will be a default internet gateway, which is associated with your default VPC. So in this infra, since I'm doing everything from scratch, I will be creating a new internet gateway. Yanwala internet gateway. And just click on create internet gateway. Now, once you create your internet gateway, you have to tell AWS this internet gateway will be associated with which building. There are multiple buildings in AWS. So I have to make sure that this internet gateway is associated with your VPC. So I'll click on action and attach to VPC. And from here, select the VPC which I created. Then click on attach. So now my building is also ready. My door is also ready. And in here, if you come down in the security section, you will see two options. One is your network ACL and the next is your security groups. So if you click on network ACL, by default, when we create our subnets, there is the VPCs, you can see ACL getting generated, and this will be associated with the subnets which are part of my Gyanwala VPC. So in here, you can see by default, it says inbound rules allow, outbound rules allow. If you want, you can create your own network ACL from here. This ACL decides the traffic between the subnets. We also have the flexibility to restrict it even at the NIC level of your specific VMs that we are going to launch in different subnets, which is going to be controlled by our security groups. So let's say, for example, in here, I would create a security group. Let's say my security group. This is for HR. For Gyanwala HR department. And in here, I have to define the inbound rules. with respect to my system. So for example, if I have to log in to my system, maybe on port 22, so I can choose from here SSH whom I want to allow. Let's say I want to open it for everyone. By default, nothing will be allowed. So if you want all your systems, all your source PCs to have access to this specific VM that we are going to launch in the subnet, then we choose it to anywhere. But again, it is not a best practice. So always try to limit it to specific IPs wherein you can define your custom list, or your my IP will take the IP address from where you have logged in. So as of now, I'm just going it with anywhere. And then let us say tags. These tags are like optional, but definitely useful in terms of identifying the different resources of your um, departments. So for example, let me add here a tag as department HR. Sorry, the tag will be department and the value of this will be HR. And then let me create the security group. So in here, I have SSH rule to access, to allow everyone for this specific HR. Now let me also go ahead with creating the VMs. So for example, now I want to launch my different systems in different subnets. So I'll be going to services and EC2. EC2 is your compute service, which gives you the ability to launch the different instances. So then we'll click on instances. Let's say I'll click on launch instance. And after launching an instance, you will get an option wherein you will be asked for Amazon machine image. So each image is unique in terms of the specific product that you want to use. Maybe you want to utilize Linux. In Linux, there are different variations. So the different various images which are available will be having different AMI IDs. This is Amazon machine image. You can create your own image as well, which which we'll be discussing in some other videos. So for now, just understand that this is your basic AMI image based on what you are trying to launch. So for example, let's say I want to launch my Amazon Linux or let me just go with Red Hat. In here I can see Red Hat, there are different versions. So let me just select this. I'll accept this, continue. And now once you have chosen or decided which platform you want to launch your instance on, like Linux or Windows, then you'll be asked to define the CPU and the memory for that specific resource. So in here at present, I'm just going for T2 micro. There are different family types which are available. So if, for example, if you are choosing T2 micro, you will be provided with 1 vCPU and 1 GB of memory. If you go with T2 large, you will be provided with 2 vCPU and 8 gig of memory. Let me just select this. Click on next. Now in here, how many systems I want? How many maybe web servers I want to launch? So for now, I just want to launch one instance. And this instance, I'm going to launch in which VPC? So from here, I'll choose the Gyanwala VPC, and the subnet, I'm going to define which subnet out of these I want to launch it in. So for example, at present, let's first start with the 1A, AP South 1A, which is my HR. And the HR, whether I want to connect to outside world or not. So for example, I want the system which is launched in here to have internet access. So I'll choose this option as enable, so that the system gets assigned a public IP address. And after this, you can also see a network interface which is getting assigned to this specific VM. Then we click on next. In here, you can see the storage. So by default, 10 GB is being added to your system. If you want, or if you have a higher requirement, you can either increase this, or you can also add another volume. For now, I'll leave this to default. Click on add next tag. So add a tag, again, I'm going to use my department tag. And since this is what I'm going to launch in my HR, so I'll select this as HR, then click next. From here, I can choose the security group which I created. I'll select this and review and launch. Click on launch. So when you are trying to launch this specific instance, you will be asked how you want to log in. So whether you want to create a new existing key pair, or existing key pair which is already existing, or which you would have created earlier on your AWS account. You can choose that either. So for now, I'm just going to choose the existing key pair. I'll acknowledge this. From the drop down, you'll select the key pair which is currently present in your AWS account. So always we need to make sure that when later on, after the instance gets deployed, if you plan to log into the system, so you have this a private key, so that you will be able to successfully authenticate and will be able to SSH to the device. Then I'll click on launch instance. So with this, now if we click on this icon, we can see the instance is getting initiated, and the instance also got a public IP address. And this instance is, is being launched in 1A. This instance is associated with your HR security group. It will take a while. While this is getting initiated, let me also create a security group for IT and finance. If you want, you can have a common security group as well to control the different set of systems, but it is totally up to your choice. It is a good practice, to separate it out for different departments. So let me just choose this as security group finance. For finance department. And from here, I'm going to choose the VPC. And in my inbound rules, I'm going to assign for SSH anywhere. Then tags, I'm going to add as my department. And this was for finance. So I'll just add a value as finance. Now let me create one more security group. IT. And from the drop down, I'll select the VPC, click on add. If you want to allow multiple protocols, you can add multiple rules as well. So maybe, for example, if you want to host a web server on this specific VM that you are going to launch in this specific subnet, so you also have to allow your HTTP rule from here. Then we'll click on, I missed this. Okay, source anywhere. And then at the end, I'll add a tag as well. Department as my IT. Create the security group. Now security group is created. Let me come back to my instance. And let's launch a new instance. Let me select this quickly. Selected. And from here, I'll select my VPC and the subnet we have already launched for HR. Let's start with 1B, which is IT. And IT also wants to have access to the internet. So I'll just enable this option. Then click on next. Add storage is fine. Add tag, again, department. This is my IT. And from here, I'll select an existing group. IT, I have created this. So now let's review and launch. And again, I'm going to use the same key to log into this specific instance. So I'll click on launch. Now let me go back and launch a new instance. And from here, I again select the same VPC, and in the subnet section, since I'm going to deploy in my finance subnet, I'll select the finance. And finance does not need to have connectivity towards the internet. I should not be able, nobody from internet also should be able to connect to the finance systems. So I don't want to assign any public IP to this specific system. Now let me just click on next. I don't want to add any extra storage. So just click on add tags. And from here, again, department, choose it finance. From the security, I'll select my finance. Review and launch. Use the same key. Okay, so this specific region does not support T2 micro. So let me change this. Let us try with T2 small. Yes, I want to continue. It does not support T2 small as well. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so if we are stuck with this specific case wherein the specific instance type is not supported in our um, specific subnet or availability zone, let's check. So what we can do is, if we go to instance type, and then maybe from here, if I look for availability zone, then I want to launch an instance in my South 1C. So let's see, if I select this, I can see here these many different instance types are supported. Let me just expand this. You know, these many different types. So let me go with the architecture which is supported is ARM and A1 medium. So, okay, now I have this information that in South 1C, I have to choose an AMI where the architecture is ARM and the instance type is A1 medium, or any of these you can go with. So now let's go back with the EC2 instance, launch an instance. And from here, I'll select this medium, ARM, 64-bit ARM architecture, select, and let's search for A1 medium. Okay, it is already selected. Now let's go ahead with next. I want one instance, and the VPC, I want this to be in Gyanwala, and this should be part of finance. I don't want this to be accessible from internet, so no public IP assignment. Now let's go to the storage section. I don't want to do any changes. Next, let's add the tag as department finance. Next, and from this I'll choose the security group, which is finance, then review and launch, and launch. Select the same key and launching the instance. While this instance is getting initiated, let's have a look at the previous two instances which we have launched. So in here you can see, this one instance is launched in 1B. This is the IP address. This is the public IP address which is assigned to my system, and the security group is IT, and this is in this VPC and associated with this specific subnet. This is my instance type. So let's say if I, from remote end, if I plan to log into the system, if I copy this, or I can select, click on connect, and when you click on connect, you will see the option in which you can try to connect to this specific instance. So we need to make sure that we have this key file locally on our system. Now let me try to log in to this specific system. So in here, I can type in the details. This EC2 dash user is the default username and my IP address of my instance. And now, while you are trying to access this, you need to give in the key as well. So from connection SSH authentication, you need to make sure that you select your key. So let me choose my key. I've selected the key, then click on open. Oh, I'm not able to connect. So, which means I missed something. Let's go back to our EC2 console and check. In here, I have my public IP assigned to the instance. Okay. Now let's check at the security group. As per my security group, let's check the rules. The inbound rules says that I should be able to access via SSH. So inbound rule is fine. Now let's have a look at our VPC. So in my VPC, this VPC is associated with the main route table, and let's check the route table. In my route table, let's check the route table. If I select this and click on routes, in here you can see that at present, it is only mentioning the details of your local subnet. So any packet which is hitting to this VM will definitely come in. But in order for the system to respond back, the system does not know where to send the packet to. So that is the part which we missed. So in here, whenever we try to do this configuration from scratch, we need to make sure that from the route section, you click on edit and add a route saying any network, send it to the internet gateway, and click on save, close. Okay, now my routing also should be fine. Let's try accessing our instance once again. And this time if I try to refresh this page, I'm able to get this screen and I have successfully logged in. So in here, if I type ifconfig, I can see this is my local instance IP address, which is assigned to my system. Now let's check this for another system. Okay, in here, let's go back to our EC2 instance. This instance is part of 192.168 2.7. 2.7 should be this one, and this is my from my IT department. And let's check for this. This is from my HR department. Let me try to log into this. Let's see. Connect, copy, and same I need to mention in my SSH the key file, and I'm successfully able to log in. And in here, if I type ifconfig, 192.168 1.232, and this instance is 192.168 2.7. So let me see, can I ping between these two systems? From here, I'm trying to ping the IP address which is in my different segment. Okay, ping is not successful. Let's try pinging from this system to this system. This also is not successful. How about SSH? Let me try SSH EC2 user at. So you see, I'm able to get the prompt, which means SSH is going through. So now the reason being, I'll just put this no, I don't want to connect. I just wanted to show you that from this specific system, which is in a different department, when I'm trying to connect to HR department or from HR, let's try this from the other direction. Let's say SSH EC2 user at this IP. I'm getting this option as well. So now, which means both ways, I'm able to do SSH between the systems. Now, the reason being, I have not allowed ICMP at my security level, and that's why I am not able to ping, but still able to SSH. I have allowed only SSH access to my system. So let's go back. This is my system. This is the HR security group. Let's select this. And in here, let us click on edit inbound rules and add a rule for, let's say, ICMP from anywhere. And just click on save rules. So now I have modified the ICMP. Let me also modify it for, let's go to security groups. Where is it? Okay. Let us select our IT. In here, inbound rules, edit, and let's add ICMP here as well. Okay, now I have added the ICMP, both directions. Now, after adding ICMP, let me try doing a ping. And let's see if it is successful. Bingo, I'm able to ping From here also I'm able to ping. So I have successfully allowed the ping connection as well as SSH, which is allowed as per my initial configuration itself. So you can, limit the different ports at your specific instance level as well. On that specific instance, based on the different services which are running on, you can allow or deny specific protocols. Let's say, for example, I have also shown you if by default you do not have the route, or you do not plan to, okay, let me just show you from here. Can I reach internet? Right. I'm able to reach internet, and from this system, yes, I can reach internet because these two systems are connected to my internet gateway. How? As per my, where is it? Let's go back to our networking VPC. You can see here the route table, and in this route table the subnets are associated, and within this you can also see, let me just show you the routes. We added this route. If, for example, I delete this specific route, so you will observe that, okay, let me just delete this, edit route, and delete this specific route, save. The moment I do this, I will lose access to my systems. You see, the systems are not responding now. And in a while, it will just show as timed out. Or maybe let me try, if I try to do a duplicate session, no, this is not responding. So this is how you can build each and every component. We can also install the various services as per your requirement on the instance itself. Let's say, for example, this instance you want to make it as a web server, so you can install Apache on it. Or this server you want to make it as your database server, that also you can do. From those systems, you do not want to have internet access, so do not associate that with your internet gateway. So to summarize, what we have learned in this specific tutorial is how we can create our VPC. We started first with selecting the region, then created our own VPC. In the VPC, we then defined the different subnets. With respect to different subnets, then I created my own routing table. This routing table I have associated with my subnets. I created an internet gateway so that the systems can go out to the internet, and this internet gateway I have associated with my VPC. And after creating all this, then I showed you you can control this subnet communication based on the network ACLs, or at the VM level or the specific instances level that you are launching in your system. You can configure the various security groups, and within the security groups you can edit the different ports which you want to allow or deny. So and then after this was about the network part. After this, we saw how we can launch our instance. So launching the instance, we clicked on instance and then click on launch instance. From here, we went through the different options like selecting the AMI, selecting the instance type, the instance storage, adding specific tags, and mapping the security groups to this specific instance. that I want, and then launch it. We also came across a specific issue wherein specific AMIs, we are not able to launch in a specific availability zone. So how you can check this? You'll go to services, again EC2, and from this instance types, we can filter based on the availability zone, in which you are looking for or planning to launch the specific instance, or some instances would be supported in all your availability zones. So you can do the filter that way as well. So with this, I would like to summarize and conclude this specific session. I hope you found this informative, and now you will be able to deploy your environment by yourself. Thank you for watching.